So we are at the 2025 PDAC conference. This is the Northern Miner. I'm Devin Murrigan. And we want to cast the spotlight now on the Indigenous Resource Network. This is a group that advocates for the voices of Indigenous workers and businesses in Canada's resource landscape. Well, it's a pleasure to welcome the leader of that group, John Desjarlais. He joins us now. John, thanks very much indeed for your time.
My absolute pleasure, Devin.
Listen, I'm going to get straight into it because it was such big news over the last 2 weeks. That Supreme Court ruling in British Columbia saying that the a system that was supposed to do fair consultation with Indigenous communities failed in its constitutional duty. I think that sets a very good tone for what we want to speak about here. What did you make of that ruling?
It was, I guess, from my perspective and from our perspective, it wasn't necessarily a surprise, right? And so, because I think we're seeing a lot of challenges in terms of like operationalizing, UNDRIP and FPIC and, seeing that, seeing success within that and what does that look like? And I think we're still figuring that out. Indigenous communities are in a process of, reconciliation, building trust and building trust with industry and building trust with government and governments as such and industry as such. And so, I think a lot of these things that are still going on right now, we're going to continue to see, I think, challenges and where we're, not successful in the operationalizing of those goals and that legislation. So.
You've in the past raised concerns saying that Indigenous communities often don't have the capacity to have that engagement. They need help on that kind of front. Just broaden what you meant by that.
Absolutely, and so there's capacity defined in a lot of different ways, and so of course financial capacity, and so Indigenous communities to participate in that process, need the financial capacity to do that. They need to be present, they need to show up, they need to attend. A lot of these communities are rural, remote, and so what was facilitating that type of conversation look like wherever it may be, and then having the appropriate voice there, and then the coordination of it. So there's the financial aspect of participating in that, and also on kind of the research and subject matter side as well too. Communities lack the resources to get the objective research and the objective subject matter experts on these matters. And a lot of them are struggling with all sorts of issues, abject poverty and whatnot, and so to be able to direct source revenues to these type of things is a huge challenge. And then of course there's the human resource capacity. So a lot of these communities, do they have the specialist expertise? Do they have that in-house capacity to navigate process, to navigate the requirements of being meaningfully involved in that process? So that's, those are some of the things that we certainly advocate for. Whose responsibility is that? Government, industry? Absolutely, to ensure that these communities meaningfully participate in this process, right? And so that's a big challenge right now, being addressed in there's a lot of great examples where, communities are being supported, industry stepping up, government stepping up, but it still continues to exist because there's no level set, I think, practice in terms of what good consultation really looks like.
You've said in the past as well that part of that is the need for government and other stakeholders to respect the decision-making process of Indigenous communities. On the ground, just give me how that pans out in practice. What do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how communities define consent, how communities determine decisions. What does true self-government look like? And that's what it looks like. The ability to make decisions as it relates to your region, to your nation, to your rights, and then have that respected and understood. And so, communities right now, when they decide these things, when they decide on these matters, when they decide, to endorse and whatnot, that's, I think there's a lot of challenge around that because this is where government and industry, need to understand what that looks like, what that process looks like, and support that decision-making process. And how could they help facilitate that? How could they help, encourage engagement from within those communities and support that, and then develop resilient, sustainable, consent or decision-making or decisions.
Do you think that something positive can come up on that front with conferences like this in PDAC? I mean, is there enough engagement here to sort of make something flourish on the consultation side?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that is consistent we see across everywhere is that everyone wants to see it done better. Everyone wants to see something resilient, sustained. They want to see, not necessarily a process, but even just, the kind of what's the spirit and how do you exact on the spirit and intent, right? And what's the goals, and understanding community and understanding needs. I think all of that is happening right now. It's just a matter of, okay, what are the things that are really working? What are the examples of things that are really working? What does it look like? And how is that good for business? And I think that's the other part of it too, is there's an appetite and understanding, and there's examples of that. How does good partnership and good relationship translate into business, and to advancing projects in terms of their efficiency and their operationalization from project to mine. There's a strong appetite for that, and there's a strong appetite to do things better by Indigenous community, and it's just a matter of starting to put all those pieces together.
Well, I'm going to leave it there. Well, thanks very much indeed for actually chatting to us. John Desjarlais is the leader of the Indigenous Resource Network. Thank you indeed.